can't imagine what it's like to be any of the families, whether that's the Kohbergers or any of the students' families. It must be torture waiting for this. On the other hand, in both cases, you want the case to be solid. You don't want anyone to be able to say that they were not given competent representation. The Idaho 4 case has been delayed by 1 week. New information coming from a back and forth in the court has revealed that instead of starting on August 11th, Bryan Kohberger's murder case will start on August 18th. This case has already been delayed before. In fact, it was supposed to start in July of this year, but between the change of venue and other issues raised by the defense, it was delayed. We've got another delay now. Let's go over what was released from the court this week now that this trial has gained a little bit of extra time, and talk about if this will impact or how it will impact Bryan Kohberger's defense. So the term Idaho 4 refers to the 4 victims of a fatal off-campus stabbing near the University of Idaho in November of 2022. The victims, Kaylee Goncalves, Madison Mogen, Ethan Chapin, and Xana Kernodle, were all students at the University of Idaho and were found in the 112 King Road after what appeared to be a very vicious attack. Ultimately, law enforcement arrested Bryan Kohberger, who was a PhD student who was studying criminology at Washington State University, which is very close to the other university town. It's just across the state border. He was arrested at his parents' home in Pennsylvania in December, about 6 weeks after the attack, and he was extradited to Idaho. He's been in jail ever since. He waived his right to a speedy trial, and during that time, his defense team has argued several times that his trial should be delayed. They've argued for more evidence. They've at times insinuated and stated that they felt like the prosecution was holding up their ability to properly complete discovery by not fulfilling requests in a timely manner. So there's been a lot of back and forth. There's been a ton of pretrial motions. And now the trial has been delayed once again. So at one point, the trial was going to take place in Latah County, near where Moscow is located, and it was then moved to Ada County. It was also supposed to start in July of this year, I believe, and it was pushed back. It was supposed to start August 11th. Now, opening statements will take place on August 18th, according to a new order from Judge Stephen Hippler, who took over the case from Judge Judge. This also means that jury selection is delayed. Jury selection was going to be July 30th. It's now August 4th. There's also a set amount of time before, right at the end of July, for some more pretrial motions from both prosecutors and defense. This is interesting largely because it's been a long time coming. I'm sure for the families of the victims, they are anxious to get this proceeding underway and to get a result. I'm sure for the Kohberger family, they are wanting to move forward with this, and Kohberger himself must at some point not want to be in legal limbo forever. So the delay of the trial does seem like it might be necessary, but I'm sure it does not bring comfort to anyone involved. In a statement to Fox News, a spokesman for the Idaho court, Nate Pepino, said that the updated timeline was not a result of the defense attempting to delay the issue, but rather just an issue with scheduling with the court. There's been a lot of concern, number one, about the gag order that's been in place, but also about issues regarding seating, who's going to be able to have access to this. I did a video on this last week. I'll link it probably at the end of this video, or it may be in the comments. The description. The case is expected to have a lot of media attention. So there's been questions from journalists about potentially getting reserved seats. There's been questions about reserving or displaying the faces of the 2 surviving roommates. And generally, there's been a little back and forth over the lottery system that's been set up where people will go online at noon the day before to reserve a seat for the next day. So I'm not sure how much of that was a factor, or if there is another case that's impending or impeding the court's ability to accommodate this case that's expected to be widely publicized and heavily attended. But like I said, jury selection continues on August 4th. So, a little less than a week delay, and we'll see the trial start 1 week after. So I think for a lot of people, especially independent journalists, they are probably anxious. They're probably worried about reserving their accommodations or whatever else they need. But it's going to be interesting to see who ultimately becomes the voice of this trial in the media, because like I said, mainstream media outlets like let's say CBS or NBC or CNN or whatever you like, is effectively at the mercy of the system, the lottery system, the same way that your favorite YouTube crime documentaries people are, your local reporters, your citizen journalists. So I'll be curious to see what coverage looks like. They are live streaming it from the court's website, so a lot of people can comment that way, but it does make a difference when you're reporting, being able to be in the room and see the jury and get other sort of information to impact how your report is being conveyed to the general public. The other notable development from this order was the judge's rejection of the defense's desire to introduce evidence suggesting that 4 other people were involved in this attack, not Bryan Kohberger. So the defense, totally within their rights, is trying to submit an alternate suspect theory. And in their theory, there are 4 people who carried out this attack. There are a lot of people online who support this theory, or at least support the idea that it couldn't have been Kohberger alone, just because of the data presented by the prosecution. They say, that there were 2 surviving roommates who were also home, that Xana and her boyfriend Ethan were in one room on one floor, that Maddie and Kaylee were on a different floor, and that the attacks took place in, it seems like the span of 7 minutes, and that one roommate saw one of the men leaving, or a man leaving, and somehow was not also attacked, even though maybe she was seen. It's been a little bit confusing. So, obviously, as they prepare for his defense, being able to say, number one, Bryan wasn't there, and also it wasn't just one person, it's 4, and potentially, I would think, and I'm assuming here, suggests that there was maybe impropriety on the part of law enforcement. It's a big deal. So Hippler said that the request did not meet the Idaho rules of evidence standard, and he said it did not link any of the individuals to the crime scene, demonstrate motive, or provide DNA evidence placing them at the scene. There is going to be a back and forth about DNA in this case for a long time. So what we all heard about initially was that there was a knife sheath found in the room with Maddie and Kaylee, and it had DNA, which ultimately police said linked Bryan Kohberger to the scene. Now, there's been back and forth about how that link was obtained. Was it done lawfully? Was the tip that came into the FBI that ultimately linked Bryan Kohberger to it, is it reliable? Is it sourceable? Is it legally obtained? The other question is, it's been revealed that it's touch DNA. And so if you touch something, does that mean that you were there, especially if it's a movable object? It's not like it's on the wall. It's on an object that could have been brought to the crime scene by someone else. This is just one theory. I know there are a lot of people who feel strongly that Bryan Kohberger is the perpetrator. I try to stay as neutral as I can. I do feel like there have been some sloppy moments from the prosecution in this case, which makes me suspicious. And I also want to honor Kohberger's right to be treated as innocent until proven guilty. It's so hard to balance the emotions of wanting justice for young people who have their whole lives ahead of them, and also not get caught up in the he looks like a creep or he seems weird or whatever what is put out there, and offer him the presumption of innocence. So the other thing that comes up fairly frequently in regards to DNA is that there was apparently DNA on the banister in the stairwell of the home, and also under one of the victim's fingernails. And I've heard at times, I heard one commentator was like, she's a young lady, so, it could be anything. But if you are law enforcement and you didn't identify and rule out those people, I would assume it would leave open the possibility to suggest that there's more significant DNA in potentially what could be perceived as a defensive wound type place, and pinning it on one person without ruling out all the other sources of DNA doesn't alleviate any sort of plausible deniability. So it's definitely one of the reasons that I want to pay close attention to this trial, because DNA evidence tends to be the be all and end all, right? Like, if there's DNA, that means you're there. But I think the quality of DNA, the legality of how it was obtained, and also the relevant type of DNA, especially if there was other unidentified male DNA at the scene, would make or break this case. And I'll remind you that this is a death penalty case. So Bryan Kohberger could face capital punishment for this. It matters if the DNA was planted at the scene and if the DNA is not as abundant as perhaps another man's DNA that is in places that maybe it shouldn't be. The evidence, I don't have the evidence that the defense presented, and I wonder what we'll get, but it does seem a little bit unfair that the judge threw it out. I don't have enough information totally in on this. Maybe you guys can let me know what you think. I'd be curious to hear Ann Taylor, Bryan Kohberger's defense attorney, talk about this a little bit more. Judge Hippler also ruled on cross-examination in this order. He said that the defense team can question law enforcement about the scope of their investigation and their thoroughness, but they are not allowed to question officers in regards to their alternate suspect theory. So they're not allowed to bring up these 4 people and ask direct questions about that without at first obtaining the court's approval. This seems a little unfair to me, but again, if we're saying that they are pulling 4 people at random that have nothing to do with anything and potentially trying to link them to the case in a way that doesn't meet state law, I guess this is the natural follow-up. There is a lot of criticism of the way law enforcement handled this case. I would be curious, and this is something you'd have to listen to the trial to hear, how much of the questioning of law enforcement parallels conversations have gone on online. I've always wondered who in Ann Taylor's office, if anyone, is listening to the online community that's following this case that has raised questions, especially when it comes to things like the car that is allegedly supposed to be Bryan Kohberger's, but also instead of being white, it might actually be green, and some of the other theories that have cropped up. I think that practicing law, especially as a defense attorney in this day and age, must be incredibly unusual when your case, number 1, gets national attention, and number 2, has been nitpicked by the internet. Now, obviously, prosecution, judge, defense all have access to information that probably no one on the internet does, hopefully, because there's a gag order. But just having a lot of people brainstorm and think about this case and come at all of the different angles, it's almost like a resource that defense attorneys in the past never could have had. On the other hand, it doesn't mean that it's always reliable. So I'll be curious to see what this questioning of law enforcement looks like, and especially for people who have been diligently researching the community and the area, how much of the information or the questions raised at trial will parallel their concerns. Lastly, the order addressed the length of trial. So at one point, it was estimated this trial would take 3 months, and right now they are not offering an estimation of duration, and they said that proceedings will continue until complete. So I don't know if that's a sign that they think actually it's going to wrap up really quickly. I don't know if that's potentially indication that Hippler thinks there could be grounds for a mistrial and that the defense will raise them. He encouraged the defense to pursue a special prosecutor after the Dateline special on this horrible tragedy was released, because Dateline, they said widely, we're going to show you evidence that's never been published. And they did, but the reason it's never been published is because there is a gag order. And that definitely sent some sparks in the pretrial hearings. And I think ultimately impacted the long-term viability of this case. Not a commentary on if Bryan Kohberger is innocent or guilty, but rather in the quality of the case and if his rights are violated, because it does not seem like the question would be, now you go to jury selection and you say, have you guys seen this NBC documentary? Because NBC is a national network. And they're like, oh yeah, I saw that. Well, can he get a fair, unbiased jury? And this is after it's already been moved. Do you move it again? I'm really curious to see how it goes. So let me know if you have an estimate on how long this trial will last, if you think it'll be fast. Like I said before, I had always read that the estimate was that it would take 3 months, which is fairly lengthy. There had also been concern that from the judge that they might have to sequester the jury. Huge expense to the taxpayers if they have to do that. But again, maybe this is an indication from the judge that he is not sure it will take as long as previously expected. Is that good or bad for Bryan Kohberger? I don't know. That's the major announcements from this case this week. Let me know what you think, and let me know if you think this delay is warranted. Should it get pushed back even further? I mean, there are concerns that the concern from the defense is that they haven't had enough time to complete discovery because they aren't getting the information they need from the prosecution. Again, I can't imagine what it's like to be any of the families, whether that's the Kohbergers or any of the students' families. It must be torture waiting for this. On the other hand, in both cases, you want the case to be solid. You don't want anyone to be able to say that they were not given competent representation, or, that it sounds crazy, but you want it to all go by the book. And even if you're the parent and you want to see a conviction, if you're a parent of the victim and you want to see a conviction, you still, and this sounds horrible, but you have to root for him to have a good defense, because if you really believe that he did it, then he needs to be able to have adequate legal representation so that the conviction can stay and not be overturned on appeal. It's a fascinating case to me, and I'm very curious to hear if we'll get another delay. I sort of hope not, just because I think that it's been a really long time and it must be an exhausting journey for everyone. On the other hand, if a delay is needed for justice to be carried out, that seems worth it. Let me know what you guys think. Thanks to those of you who have subscribed. Thanks to those of you who keep coming back, especially if this is not your favorite type of content, or if you're a new viewer and my other videos aren't your favorite type of content. It all makes a huge difference to me in my life as I, start ramping up production on this channel and see where this goes. Thanks so much. Let me know what you guys think on any of these things, but especially let me know if you think that the alternative suspect theory should have been dismissed by the judge. I'll see you guys later in the week.